Thank you so much. And let me first say it's a great honor to be here in Berlin. This is a little bit like visiting Big Brother or Big Sister coming from the Swedish Social Democrats. It's really great, I think, to see so many people interested in campaigning and campaigns. And I think that is also, when it comes to the handicraft of doing campaigns, that is also spreading across and beyond the political spheres. I now have after the election, I've started to work as a consultant, and we see more and more that big corporate companies today are starting to ask themselves questions like, what do we do, and how do we actually, how do we reach out to the society, and what is our reason to exist? And they start thinking campaigns in the way that political parties have thought about campaigns for quite some time. So it's kind of interesting to see that the idea of actually running campaigns is spreading out. So there are chances for you to develop your interest in both politics and in the world outside of politics. Ich hätte gern alles in Deutsch gesagt, aber das wäre sehr langweilig, weil ich immer müsste über die Wörter denken. But I hope that translation will actually fix it. My German is awful. My German is awful. That's absolutely nothing to give me a hands of applause for. My mother is from Germany, from Flensburg. I should speak much better German, but that's what happened in globalization. English takes over. For those of you who were here in the last session, the discussion there was kind of interesting, I think. When I came in pretty much a year ahead of the election in Sweden, which was in September 2014, the parliament election, the feeling was very much like everything we brought from the thinking in America was like, yeah, it works there, but not here, right? Yeah, they can get volunteers, but we've talked about volunteers every election campaign since Olof Palme, and we never got any. So why waste time on that? Yeah, we can knock on doors, but it doesn't work. People don't want to be disturbed, and you come in there and they're making food, and the kids are all over, and it just annoys them. They're rejecting. They're not going to vote for us if we knock doors. So every kind of campaign initiative involving the fact that we are a popular movement, that the social democracy has always been the idea of gathering the many to actually be a counterforce against the few with the resources. Everything you try to do in trying to find an energy of that, there was always someone saying, it's not impossible here. So what we actually did was that first we needed to sit down and really think through the psychology in the party. How do we actually engage? How do we motivate the members to actually understand what on earth we're doing in the kind of leadership or management of the campaign? So we needed to reach out very clearly the first half year. I was traveling all of Sweden just to meet face-to-face on meetings like this and tell them, this is our strategy, this is the science behind it, this is how people will react, this is the psychology, and be extremely open with why we were doing the stuff we were doing. We also had to do a lot of tricks, and I will come back to that later. We had meetings like this with all the local politicians in the city hall. And they were all hoping for, a half a day of party strategy for the campaign. They wanted someone to come from Stockholm and tell them, this is how we're going to do it, this is how we're going to win, this is the advertisement we're going to post, and then you can stay in office and do whatever you do. And instead we had a very short introduction by me telling them this is a strategy, and I ended up saying that, and the key in our campaign is the doorstep campaign. Everyone needs to knock on doors, and that goes for you, and you are the leaders of the party locally, and therefore you have to be out and do it. And they were like, yeah, maybe, we'll see. And then they thought that I'll try to get away from that somehow. And then we said, and therefore we've parked 2 buses out here, so now we're going to go out and do it for real. And force them to do it, because then naturally no one could leave the room, right? So they had to go out in the bus, and we sent them out. We gave them a manuscript, a short run-through on the bus, and this is what you're going to say, this is the area you're going to knock, these are the local issues here where you are, and so on. And they knocked. And they would look at me like, if they had a knife, I would not have the chance to stand here. They would be so annoyed, because I was really breaking their integrity. And with the position they had in the local community, should they actually knock on someone's door? Well, what if someone recognizes me? Yeah, that's the whole point, right? So we got them out, we got them to knock doors, and they would come back 20 or 30 discussions and talks later, 2 hours or so. 3 hours. And they would say, this was fun. And actually what happened then was that all of these people, I mean, once, just like Germans, Swedes are rather polite, right? So you don't tell them, I hate your party and I hate you. But they actually ask a few questions and then they close the door politely. So the people that didn't really like us, they would be polite. The people that did like us were just so happy. Oh, it's great that you're coming. I have these thoughts, and what can we change in Sweden to deal with this? So these people would come back full of energy. And it turned out that actually they were just afraid to make a fool out of themselves, just like we all are, because in there, pushing us into saying, I am a representative for SPD, I'm knocking doors here because I want to engage you in our discussion or in our campaign, or I want to ask you what you think is most important. That's really pushing your own integrity, and then you're pushing that integrity onto someone else's. But if you do it. We also posted, we also did some scientific research. We had the luxury, but also the disastrous situation to have an EU Parliament election just a few months before our real Parliament election, so to speak, which screwed up everything, which I will come back to. But the good thing about it was that we could actually test in real life. So we had a door knock campaign before the EU election, and we could actually send in scientific methods. So one of the things we did was that we picked out an area, we picked out exactly what doors to knock in that area, and then we made sure that no one was knocking a very kind of similar area at the same time. And then we had someone from one of this opinion poll research institutes call all the people up that we had knocked, asking them basically, now what did you think? Did anyone from any party contact you? Oh, yes, as a matter of fact, they did. Now, what did you think of that? Was it a good discussion? Did you, were you more or less prone to vote for the party that actually interacted with you, and so on. So we got kind of the figures down there. We also made one of these, a local poll, just asking which party will you vote for, and it turned out to be a huge difference. 2 weeks after, 3 weeks after we had done that round of knocking, a huge difference in both what people would actually vote for. We don't know how long that effect was, but we came out very, very good in the reference area where we had knocked the doors, and very poor actually in the area where we hadn't knocked doors. Also, there was a vast majority of people appreciating that politicians would knock on their doors and ask them questions. Very few said that we were disturbing them. Very few said that, no, it was just an annoyance. They actually said, yes, it was very good, and I had a chance to ask a few questions, and I liked it very much. So with that, with those numbers, I could come back to the party before the parliament election and say, hey, listen, if you want to win the election, it takes a bit of effort. And we need to test it. And naturally, if you feel that this person that you speak to really, really is stressed and need to do other things, well, say thank you for the time, hand over a leaflet, and leave. I mean, we shouldn't push. We need to be social individuals, right? So that was just an introduction, which was very long. And now I work as a consultant. I used to be a management consultant. I love PowerPoint slides, and you're the victims of that love. So it's going to be a full speed ahead, and really you will be welcome to ask questions afterwards. And if there's anything you don't understand, just raise your hand, and I'll try to see you, and we'll let you come in while I speak. Anyway, 2 years ahead of the election, just like I guess the SPD right now, we were a party with huge problems. Not only had the Conservatives come back and refurbished themselves, stolen all of our positive attributes. So they were all of a sudden the new Workers' Party, and we were the old Workers' Party, and you don't want to be the old of anything because, as Jim Messina said earlier, you need to speak about the future, right? We had I can say in this closed community, we'd had awful choice of leaders and awful choice of strategies for quite some time. On top of that, or as a result of that, voters really didn't understand what on earth were the Social Democrats for. I mean, what should we have them for? Yeah, they were probably good in the past, but what do they actually have for the future? So people were totally losing confidence in our party structure, and that naturally had led to 2 elections lost, which in Sweden is a big, big thing. Social Democrats should win elections in Sweden, hopefully also so in the future. And our support was around 25%, which also in Sweden at that time was very low. And naturally then, the largest challenge, as I said, was to regain confidence within the party. And I think that plays very, very hand in hand with the situation in Germany right now. If you are with SPD, and if you believe that there is no chance that we can beat Angela Merkel, then there's absolutely no point in running a campaign. Because if you're going to go out there, knock doors, if you're going to go out there and knock doors and say, hi, I'm from the Losers Party, we're not going to win, but it would be very nice of you to vote for us any which way, and maybe it can make you feel nice. And if you want to work for us, we would be even more happy. We're so kind of glad to get volunteers in. So if you want to kind of, embody the losing party, you're welcome. That's not going to work, and you know it. So you need to, everyone is beatable. Everyone in Sweden, when I came in to the election campaign, said, yeah, sure, we're doing okay in the opinion polls right now, but Fredrik Reinfeldt, the name of the Conservative Party leader and Prime Minister, he is just too clever. He is just too good at this, and he is unbeatable. And on top of that, he has a finance minister who is just so popular. So there's no chance. We need to make a better election than last time, but we can't beat them. So we needed to kind of get that self-confidence into the party, right? And I think you need to. One of the first things they did before I actually came back into politics was to do this, which I thought was very, very clever. This is actually understanding. We had a tradition of saying, okay, now we're going to try to find all the industrial workers that are male and between 40 and 50 years old, and those are going to be our target group. Now we kind of acknowledge that there can be industrial workers, there can be high-income earners, there can be mothers, there can be pensionists, and they can be all over the political scale. And it's more run out of these things, the big four, or actually there should be big five in psychology. The big things that actually kind of make you the person you are in the reactions you have. And naturally, the most important thing here is the we versus me. I'm not going to go through this, it will take us an hour. But basically, people are more or less prone to believe in us together. And on the other side, there are the people that are more egocentric. They don't have to be mean because of that, but they're more like the world is circling around me, and that's how they react. And naturally, if you put a map on that, you can then, on all these different psychological scales, put out a lot of attributes that will be attributable to the different people. But you can also ask the people that are in different places of this, what do you think about the political parties? And then you can also ask other people, where do you think the political parties belong? And then you can get a very good kind of mapping. All big brands do this. All big companies do this on their, or most should do this, on their brands. So Mercedes knows, basically, that they are on the me side, at least in Sweden, on the me side over here, and probably rather introvert. That is, you have extrovert. You have a Mercedes because you feel that this gives you power and you want to show your neighbors that you can afford a Mercedes, right? Whereas Tesla, this strange American car without gasoline, they would probably be much more up on the we side. You own a Tesla because you want to show the world that you take care of the environment, and it makes 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 3 seconds, which also makes you feel fairly good, right? So you can kind of place a lot of things on this, and you can also play political parties. And naturally, solidarity and all of these words that are our leading words, they are very kind of we-focused. So we figured out here that 55% of the Swedes are on the we side in their instincts and personality. But at least a third of those 55% would vote for right-wing parties that ideologically were the me-side parties. So what the old government had done was actually to eat into our kind of psychological battlefield, so to speak, and taken that by being the new Labour Party and all of those things. So that was one thing, and from that we could actually derive a lot of things. And we understood that we were the party that people felt would want to give everything to all. Now, the problem with that is not that it's a bad message. It's really nice. Everybody wants also to get something. It's just that people understand that you can't deliver. You can't give everything to everyone. So, therefore, you have to be sharp on priority. Yeah, we want to be the nice party, but we know that this group or this people or this reform is the most important. We were perceived as a party that thought that everyone can do anything. Anyone can be a minister, everyone can be a general director, anyone can do anything. And people felt like, well, we don't think that is true, because the stuff these people are doing, it seems to be really difficult. So therefore, I don't want someone that is actually on my level of education or intellectual capacity to run the country. That would be a disaster. So therefore, you need to show that you're competent to lead a country, right? We were very kind, but also the cows are very kind. And you wouldn't vote for a cow. So you need to be very action-oriented, because it's one thing to have a good heart, but you need to make sure that people understand that you can also deliver on your kindness, right? And we have a proud history, but just as was said earlier, we have to be future-oriented if we wanted to win elections. And then you can measure these, and we did that, and we were losing all 4 of them to the Conservatives. So we set out as a target that, okay, we're going to get all up in opinion polls, but as a lever to do that, we also need to work on these things. So we need to be perceived differently. And that's very, very difficult. But I think as a starting point, it's a good thing to see, to just kind of realize that this is how we perceive and this we need to change. In order to do that, you need to kind of understand a few basic things about communication. One is this, I think. We are so goddamn good, and I believe that you are too, because we're born in this industrial era with engineers as the heroes and so on. So we are up there, logos from Greece, the logic thinking. Now, every number has to be right. Every reason has to be from A to B to C to D, and if you give a speech, you shouldn't involve too many emotions. That's Swedes. Now, the problem is that when you listen to someone, you're going to ask for these things. If you do sociological studies, you're going to see that what people remember when they've seen a politician on TV is not what they said. It's a small, small fraction. But they remember very clearly how was the body language and how was the voice. That's what they go. And that is more a feeling. What does this person stand for? And it's obscure and it's manipulatable, but that's the way people work. So we need to think about all the 3 of these, the kind of basics in rhetorics, right? So we got to be competent. Yes, we can actually fix this country. We got to have the morals, the ideology. We know what we want, and we have to have the pathos or the leadership. We have an ability to fulfill what we promise. Easy as anything. And our what we were mastering at this time was also to criticize each other. So what I said when I was running around in the party, that no goddamn conflicts in media. Because if people see that we actually, maneuver against each other within the party, what are they going to think? Are these people going to be able to hold a country like Sweden together? No, probably not. Are they good leaders when they are kind of competing rather than cooperating? No, they're probably not. And then we can speak about our logical thinking as much as we want, but no one will ever believe us. Another one of these things that I think is important to understand is that unless you're famous as a politician, you're not going to be popular. I did this for fun when I was working as press secretary for the Prime Minister. I just dotted out all the ministers on one scale on how popular they were, and on the other scale, how big percentage that saw a picture of them and recognized who they were. And it turned out that no one that were known by less than 80% of the Swedes had a grade point average of above 3%. So you need to get up and be known, and then you can start to work on your popularity. A lot of politicians naturally want to be, popular from the very start, but you have an uphill battle, and the only way to do that is actually to be known. That goes locally as well, so you can kind of work on that locally. So in opposition, who has the potential to actually become known and to become famous, and give them a task? Because in opposition, you have less area in media. When you're in government, use the minister position in order to build this fame, and then start working on how to become popular. And actually, in Germany, the SPD has 2 years to go, and there's a lot of time to do that. And in general, create a very supportive and tolerant culture. Because if you want to be famous, and you're going to start down here on a 2.2 average, people think you really suck, and you're going to be more and more famous, and it's going to take a while before you start becoming popular, well, then you're going to see a lot of criticism out there. And if you then feel that, the only thing we see in this party is when you screw up, and then we're going to be all over you. Let me know, boy, if you do a mistake, everyone is going to see it, and we're going to rub it into you. But if you do something good, we're not going to pay attention to it. If you create that kind of culture, you're not going to win elections either. So we worked very hard on that as well. a forgiving culture. It's okay to make mistakes, because out of the mistakes you will actually learn. And if you make one mistake on three good things, then it's actually a very good equation. From that, we derived at this is our platform. This is the basis of our narrative in the election campaign. We started to understand what people actually wanted, how they looked at Sweden and so on. And we said that ideologically, nothing new under the sun, basically. We want to solve the common problems together. They, the blue ones, the conservatives, want each and every one to deal with their own problems. It's me or we. It's very simple. And then we said on the solution, we want to invest more in the future. They want more privatization and more tax cuts. And on the issues level, we said that jobs, schools, health and elderly care, those are our priorities. Those are the kind of the pillar stones of a welfare society, whereas the conservatives want more tax cuts. Now, the conservatives didn't agree with these things. They wouldn't go out there and say, yay, more tax cuts, because they were the New Labour's party. But what they did was that they actually pushed forward an agenda with more tax cuts. And that's actually rather important, because this is powerful. This is our definition of how we wanted them to be perceived and us to be perceived. And to make this powerful, you need to make it functional. So we had the luck or the skills to actually present this. This is the reality of Swedish politics when they had a tax cut process going on in Parliament rather early. So it was all 8 or 9 months before the election. We had this process where they were criticized, and we decided to be against a tax cut in Parliament. It was a big discussion, no one knew. And at the end of the day, the Sweden Democrats, a xenophobic brown party in Sweden, would have to decide, which brought a lot of attention to it. So everyone at that point could read in the newspapers, yeah, the Conservatives want to cut taxes. So then we could kind of roll it out, and they couldn't escape. Because if we had just said that out of the blue, they would have said, no, we also want more jobs and invest in the future and so on. But now they were caught in it. And we knew that our position had a good support, and the process were in place, and we knew that people actually felt that they have gone too far. It's better now to start rebuilding that welfare state. And from that, we kind of derived that, and this is more like a way to present. This PowerPoint I presented to everyone in the Swedish party. This is what we're going to speak about. This is the election campaign. Something is falling apart. That was our kind of our story about Sweden in the beginning, that then turned over into a more positive thing, that we want a better Sweden for all, which is kind of simple and nothing to brag about. And then we had these two, which were the most important: more jobs, better schools. PISA, Sweden was falling, everything was a mess, so we wanted that. But we also needed to say better health care and better elderly care, better child care, and all those things that people expected from us. But if we would have said that these are equal, we would have had 85% of the local politicians only speaking about health care and elderly care. So we had to kind of tell them that, okay, those two are more important, but they're naturally very kind of development or growth-oriented, both of them. More school in order for the kids to get jobs, and more jobs in order for Sweden to be richer. So we had to kind of balance that up. And then we had all the thing down in the attic there in the basement, which naturally also was important. So if you would meet a group of people that thought that environment was super important, naturally we needed to have a very good environmental policy in place. But we couldn't speak about all the different fields just because we felt that they were important. We needed to speak about the things that people really felt in their heart was very important. I'm not going to... And then we had the problem with saying that, okay, you write a narrative, you send it out to the party, and if you're lucky, someone will post it on the wall on the local party headquarters. But no one is going to touch it. So then we decided, okay, let's go out there and preach. Let's go out there and tell them why the narrative is important, why the story is important. And we did that by a structure basically looking like this, yada, yada. You need to say two bad things. Sweden is still a good country. People hated that. I mean, we've been in opposition for 8 years, and we should say that Sweden is still a good country. But we know very well that if we would go out there and say Sweden is a disastrous country, no one would ever listen to us, because people lived in Sweden because they liked Sweden, right? So we had to start that, and we had to give them a little straw of explanation to why they voted wrong the last time. The Conservatives' ambition was not wrong. To get more jobs, to empower people and whatever there was. That was not wrong, but they have failed, naturally. And if we only said those two things, we knew that people in the doors, in their homes, would actually listen to us and feel that this was something new. They actually say something good about their opponents in politics. And then we could kind of roll out the whole thing. And actually, these are a lot of words, and people would then start to believe that they had to learn these by heart. And then they would go knock on the door, and they would read up from their intellectual mind here. Jan Larsson told me to say exactly this. And I said, no, forget about that. This is about storytelling. This is about, do you know, it's probably from Germany, the three billy goats, bockarna bruse in Swedish. It's about three goats and a bridge, and the grass is greener on the other side, but there is a troll under the bridge, so they have to fool the troll by sending over the small one first, and he says there's going to be a bigger one coming soon, and so on. Have you ever heard about that story? So I basically went out in the party and said that, hey, this is about the three billy goats. We have to have three things that we speak about: jobs, schools, and care. We have to have a troll, and actually that's the Conservatives, even though we think that they had a good ambition, but they've failed. We have to have a bridge, and that is that everyone should go to work and take responsibility. And at the end of the day, we have to have a green grass. We can win the election in September. So there has to be a story. And just as you tell this story in a very, very strange kind of pedagogic way if you do it to 3-year-olds, but you tell it in a totally different way if you want to tell it to 12-year-olds. And if you want to make a Hollywood production out of it, you're going to tell it in a super, super different way. Lots of blood and splashes, and the troll is going to be disastrous, and the goats are probably going to be small kids, and it's going to be all over. And they're going to be strange people, what do you call them nowadays, the dead, the walking deads are going to come, and well, you know the story. So you can tell them in very different ways, and that was important for us to have all the people in the party understand. It's not about learning this story outside in. You know it. You know what the three focal points are. You know why people would vote, and you can see when you get someone to listen to you. Then follow that instinct. And then we also show them this is the numbers. This is the pollsters we did on the message, and we measured that like crazy. Earlier, we would have had this very, very secret. We didn't want our opponents to see our numbers in any case. And I said, why not? If we can show our party members this, that 65% of our target group actually believes that this story is relevant and really positive, and it increases their willingness to vote for us. Let's push that out to all the members. And if someone from the Conservatives would see this, I mean, what could they do about it? So we were very transparent with all the numbers and the strategy, and we actually managed. So these are the top three questions in different opinion polls a year before and up just before the election. And we actually won. This is complicated, but the red bars are the number of people believing that the Social Democrats in Sweden have the best policy in the different areas. Normally we would lose big time in jobs to the Conservatives, but as you see there, we are bigger than all the right-wing parties, plus the Sweden Democrats. We would lose schools, but as you see there, together with the Green and the Left Party, we kind of beat the right-wing. And healthcare, we always win that. One of the things that we did, I'm probably running over time here, am I not? One of the things we did was naturally in social media that was discussed. Also, that is very possible from a European perspective. We can use a lot of the tools, and it's super easy. And this is really an environment where you can do billions of mistakes. Because, I mean, the worst thing that happens is that no one shares whatever you put out there. And no one shares it, then no one will really notice the crap you've done, right? So that's not a problem. One of the good things we did, and timing and relevance is everything, just after the PISA results came on schools, and Sweden was falling faster than any other country, we recorded this little film. I'm sorry now, this is short, but it's not translated, so you're going to have to see Stefan Löfven, the party leader, speak in Swedish a little bit. You'll be surprised how much you will understand.
Att svensk skola faller snabbast i OECD, det kom som ett slag rakt i magen. Vi visste att det inte var bra. Men att skolan har så svåra problem med så grundläggande saker som att lära våra barn att läsa och räkna, det är svårt att ta in. Det är allvar nu. Vi skyller inte på andra. Vi ger inte upp. Vi ska bygga upp skolan igen. Tillsammans.
The key here was that he said, now it's serious. We're not going to blame anyone else. We're going to take responsibility, and we're going to build school together. And then the people that saw this could actually click here, allvar.nu, which means it's serious.now. They could click that and they would come into, would you like to engage in developing a social democratic policy for schools? And we figured a couple of hundreds will come in. Most of them will be party members. But in less than 3 days, we had 5,000 people, and equivalence in Germany would be 50,000 people, actually, being a 10 times as big country. So 5,000 people who said, yeah, we want to participate. And we sent out a poll to these people asking them, are you a member of the party? And it turned out that 2/3 were not members of the party. Very many were headmasters and teachers that all of a sudden felt that someone wants to listen to my experience. And then we had naturally a disaster in how do we actually take care of this group of people and make sure that they are that they're listened to. But we had opinion polls going out. We arranged that all the parliamentarians were actually going out locally to have seminars on schools, and then we would invite everyone that had been here, and we engaged them in different ways. But it was a fabulous thing. 5,000 people just, and it took Stefan exactly 10 minutes. We stopped him in the corridor on the way to a meeting. We gave him a manuscript. We put on a camera, and as you saw there, we even managed to chop his head, which naturally anyone in Hollywood would say that that's a no-no. We decided to go ahead again, and anyway. And I think that's the thing with social media, that you can actually do that, because people will then actually only think that it's more authentic. This is not produced. This is not, done in a professional way. It's he's serious in what he says. When it comes to door knocking, again, you can say that all those numbers, $1 billion in America and everything, is fascinating, and it's so big that it won't work in Europe. But actually, if you would we managed in the election year to knock 2.2 million registered talks in the doors in Sweden. 2.2, that would be equivalent in Germany to 22 million registered discussions in the doors. And that would actually be pretty much in the same line as they managed in the Obama campaign. What drove that? Well, basically the same things that Jim Messina was speaking about. We had to engage people and we had to help them get in. We had a target, as you see, the green line on 1.5 million. We thought that was huge. But then when we got it rolling in the last couple of weeks, as you see, it just speeds up in numbers. And it's actually possible to do. Now, the stuff I started in the beginning with, you had to go out there and tell people why this is important. A technical little aid that actually proved to be very powerful was a simple app in the iPhone or other kind of phone. That one made it possible for you to read, okay, why are we doing this, and so on. Two, actually made it simple for the local party members to put in local surveys. So when Stockholm would send their members out or their volunteers out to knock, they could say that we would like you to ask 4 questions. What do you think is most important? Jobs, schools, or welfare, healthcare, or whatever? And then what do you think Stockholm should prioritize in the future, and so on? And you would click that through. And actually having a few questions when you meet someone made them feel rather comfortable, because then the party was there not to push any views on them, but rather to see what do you think is most important. And again, then you would engage. And we also put in both maps into the app so that you could see exactly where you are and what areas you're going to knock in, but also made it very easy to register. Now I spoke to this person and then to this person, and then you could register. Naturally, there was all this competition behind, so you could always see how many you knocked the last week, the last month, and in total. And that was also rather motivating once you were into it. Now I want to at least pass 100, and then people would start to speak to each other about that and start competing. We tried to break through from the psychological stuff. We tried to kind of figure out where do most people of that third in the we segment that would vote for the right wings, where would they live? So we did a very segmented map over all of Sweden with areas saying that each local party has to knock all the doors in this area, and then if you have the chance you should knock this, and so on. Don't worry about these areas, because no one is going to really change their minds because we knocked there. So we had that through Sweden in a very detailed way. And we made a very simple thing. We set up a closed Facebook group for all the people that were out knocking, and they could actually post Facebook pictures or just comments to that. So every night when the campaign was rolling, every night you would have 100 posts on this Facebook group from all over Sweden saying that we were out knocking, and we actually made 327 doors today in cold Lycksele, and the rain was pouring, and we have fantastic members here who did all these things. And that gave me a fabulous chance, because every night when I drove home by bus, I could sit there and just say, great job, fantastic, you're so good. Short comments to these pictures. And you would have a lot of people reading that and feeling that, okay, even the people in Stockholm actually sees what we are doing out here in Lycksele. And then I figured out, which I didn't know when we started this, but that it was also super easy to actually post videos onto a Facebook group. So between meetings, I could basically, in the elevator at the headquarters, I could take my telephone and I would say like, I just got the numbers. We have now passed 500,000 knocks. You guys are doing so good. Let's just run with that energy, and I'm sure that by Friday we can reach 600,000. Great work. And that would take me 20 minutes, right? 20 seconds, right? And I would post it in another 20 seconds, and then I would be up on the top level of the headquarters into a next meeting. And those kind of things, just by being so authentic and by being almost like meeting me in the goddamn elevator, it's kind of difficult to say that because I don't feel like the big manager, but for all these people, it was a big thing that Jan Larsson actually posted a video speaking directly to them. And that was just so super easy. And then naturally we could also put pressure on the kind of local and regional party leaders by posting this kind of numbers. Now this is the target, the line here, and these are the districts that are lagging under their targets. And naturally, when the parliamentarians saw this, and I presented this to the parliamentarians every week when I had my little 10 minutes there, and when they saw this, we're still lagging behind, they would call whomever they could call and start screaming a bit and start saying that, hey, these guys over here, they're almost twice their target and we're just half our target. How can that be? And then you would get kind of the organization moving, right? You don't have to be nice just because you're a leader. Facebook is very good, especially on vacation time. So during the vacation weeks in Sweden, we posted one thing on Facebook every day. And on vacation, people are out on the beaches and they actually check their Facebook. They don't read the newspapers, they don't watch news in TV, but they check their Facebook. And in average then in Sweden again, we got a share rate of 80,000 on each of these small posts that we just threw out on Facebook. So 80,000 people were observing or had in their Facebook flows these messages. Again, equivalent in Germany would be 800,000, which is decent for being a vacation day when you want to get back to the agenda and speak about jobs. And then naturally we also wanted to kind of push our key, and I just wanted to show you this. This is a TV advertisement film that we were running the last month, and it's about schools, and there will be texts on English in the bottom. But I just wanted to show you this because I think it's very, very important that we really think through how do we actually get into the ethics and the leadership and why we do the stuff we do in politics.
Mamma är sjuksköterska. Jag vill bli läkare och jobba med henne när jag blir stor. Hon säger att jag måste plugga och vara bra i skolan.
Många bitar?
NO är kul, men matten är svår. Filip får hjälp med läxan av en kille som kommer hem till dem. Mamma säger att inte vi har råd.
Om ni inte lägger av nu så ringer jag era föräldrar.
Undrar hur det kommer gå för mig.
Sverige ska vara ett land där alla kan känna framtidstro. Tillsammans kan vi skapa ett bättre Sverige för alla. Rösta på Socialdemokraterna.
Conservatives were so angry with this because they thought that we were, speaking down the Swedish schools. But this is the perception people had of the schools. And naturally then you should exploit that in order to say that this can't go on anymore. And when we had the facts on PISA and so on with us, and this really was a kick in many grandmothers, grandfathers, fathers and mothers, and big brothers and whatever there was stomach. So we were rather happy with that film. But again, I think it's super important to actually think about what nerves do you actually do you run with. As a small thing. When we did the measurement, when you do the opinion polls on films, you normally send out a script. So you send out to people 10 different pictures and a text next to it. And we would always get the winning concept would always be, we have a 10-point plan. And at the end of the day, we just said, well, scrap that. We're not going to follow the numbers anymore because this script will be much more powerful once it's on TV. But when you see those scripts, you will not really get that feeling. So we actually dare to kind of to follow our instincts rather than follow our numbers, which is difficult when you're in the middle of a campaign and a lot of money, and you have one kind of shot basically on a film like this. And then we kind of did all this, posters and stuff to try to back up. And at the end of the campaign, we wanted to add energy. As you all know, at the end of the day, it's very much what the leaders do and how you can actually kind of throw their things out. And this is also a very, very short clipping from one of the interviews or long question sessions in TV, where all of a sudden the guy asking questions asked Stefan, the party leader, whether he had any hobbies. And he said, well, I used to do a little jiu-jitsu when I was younger. And then he said, well, could you show me?
Okej, ja. Håll i dem där då. Ja.
Om du tar tag i mitt slag här.
Slag, ja.
Och så gör jag så.
We naturally spread this directly in social media, and if you heard that little crack, we added that just to... But don't tell anyone. But it made it more exciting, right? So a month before the election, everything was running fine. We had the majority in all the opinion polls who were doing a little better than last, and especially the Left Party and the Green Party were doing better than last election, and together we would form a majority. And then the big thing happened, and that was that 4 weeks ahead of the election day, the incumbent prime minister, the conservative leader, said, the increase in asylum seekers in the future will crowd out any social reform. You Swedish people, you can forget anything that anything will improve in the last 4 or even 10 years when it comes to the social sector, in a situation where the Swedes were really feeling that this is left behind. And he also launched a very, very big campaign in the Stockholm area, where a lot of the swing voters would live, telling outright lies on what would happen if Social Democrats would run the country. And they were extremely aggressive in the last week's debates on TV. And that was naturally to put in a new dimension, refugees versus reform. That was kind of totally, it was good for the Sweden Democrats, the xenophobic party, and it changed the table on the election campaign that they were losing. They pushed in the fear of change, and they actually said that they have a moral standard. So they did a lot of those things that were good. And I think to understand that, we need to kind of gather that this is not the political map anymore. It's not about left versus right. It's actually about this that I started with. It's a two-dimensional area where you can place the parties on a postmodern versus traditional and a left and right scale. And you need to understand this in order to understand what is happening in politics all over Europe right now. What we had managed to then before the election was to set the key conflict, had voters move over to the left. But what he then did was to actually turn that conflict, and by doing that, make us irrelevant in what people were actually thinking about. And that was, should we let refugees come in? Is that worth not having any social reform in the future? And that pushed voters to the right, but also down to the Sweden Democrats. And at the end of the day, that was what happened. The last 4 weeks, the Sweden Democrats gained 4% in the election. FI, which was the feministic initiative, all the way on the up, they gained also 0.5% from 2.5%. The Left Party and the Green Party lost dramatically. Everyone was more or less unchanged. And at the end of the day, we got a hung parliament in Sweden. So now we have a very weak majority, but we managed to change prime minister. But I think it's important to understand that map. And I think we as progressive parties must understand that we cannot define one point of gravity anymore and say that everyone will stick to this and we have one message and that's what we have. We have to understand that we are an area. Just like Yasmin was speaking about Warcraft, it's a little bit like dominating an area in a country and you want to save that. And in order to do that, you need to have people and issues that actually define a broad area. And you need to have an area around that you have as your area of defense or where you can actually expand if you're successful. And also define people and issues that actually are there. And you need to allow people to take positions, and then naturally have party congresses where you kind of balance these things off. So that's kind of a multi-party triangulation that I think we need to understand now when we have all these very, very progressive parties, but also the very, very kind of traditional or xenophobic parties. And that's happening in America as well. I must say that it's a shock that now I lost his name, but the business guy. Trump, exactly. Basically, the women should be in the kitchen and Mexicans should be in Mexico. And now he's actually challenging Hillary. And it's actually, I think, the same scale there. So, conclusions. I will be finished in 1 minute. You need to trust that you can win. No one is unbeatable. You need to use the strength of being a popular movement right now when there is a lot of ideas around the popular movements. You need to integrate campaigns. Social media campaigns need to be part of all the other things, and they all have to speak the same language and work with the same ideas. Stick to your story, not to the wording. It's a narrative. It's something you want people to feel, not understand. Understand the complexity of voters. They are not like SPD members or Social Democrats, and they're going to be that forever. They have a lot of different views on stuff, and they're not always even congruent, but you need to understand that and speak to them with respect for that. Frame your narrative. There are real issues and political process going on. Be the first mover. Set the stage. We did that very successfully by already in November, more than a half year before the election, said this is our strategy, this is what we run for, this is the conflicts that this election is going to be about, and that was following the Conservatives for the rest of the year. No guts, no glory. Let people make mistakes and love the people that make mistakes. And if you're ever going to send an SMS to some politician you know, do that when they have made some mistake. Because no one is so hopelessly sad as a politician that see himself or herself make a mistake on TV. It's awful. That's when you need your friends, not when you do a good thing. Be prepared for negative campaigns. They're going to come. Right-wing politicians all over the world are much better at negative campaigning in any sort than left-wing politicians. And we're probably never going to be good at that either, but then we need to have to work on our defense to it and think complex. Today's political society is so much more than left versus right. And number 11, just not to be very kind of religious, have fun and communicate to the heart of people.
Vi möter framtiden tillsammans. Rösta på Socialdemokraterna.
Kids and dogs are always very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this inspiring speech and presentation. I saw lots of people taking pictures at the solution slide. So I think we learned a lot, and I'm sure we are going to exchange a lot of more through campaigns. So thank you really, really much. And so now, just after, I think, 10 minutes, we are going to have a panel discussion here with Yasmin Fahimi and Frank Staus, and it's going to be in German. So stay here or grab a coffee, and in 10 minutes, it's going to be the next session. Also in 10 Minuten Yasmin Fahimi und Frank Staus hier und alles auf Deutsch. Also bleibt hier oder geht kurz einen Kaffee holen. In 10 Minuten geht's weiter. Dankeschön.
And it's a great trick to use all. You say that you're going to take questions, because then people think that you're open for questions, and then you use all your time speaking yourself so that you don't have to take all the bad questions. That's another one.